sometimes you're sort of like, I'm at the start line, that's what matters. You know, how I do in the race doesn't really matter, but I'm here, I'm showing up. And sometimes that's all you just need to do as an athlete. You just need to show how hungry you are. And despite, you know, being injured, you're still, you know, showing a lot of grit. You're trying to put in as much work as possible to make sure that when you do make your comeback, you're not far behind.
Shift Happens with Richard Sutton, powered by First Light.
Welcome to the Shift Happens podcast with me, Richard Sutton. Here we speak to people who have navigated extraordinary pressure, adversity and change. Moments that tested them, transformed them and ultimately shaped who they became. Join me as we explore what made their shift happen. He grew up in a Capricorn Township where his first bike was a respray. He went on to be one of only a handful of South African cyclists who would win a major classification in a World Tour race. He has competed for South Africa at the Olympics and ridden in the Tour de France. Meet Nick Dlamini. Nick, stage 9 of the 2021 Tour de France. The Alps, rain, cold. I saw the guys shaking their hands. You've already been told you're outside the time limit. You're out. The team car is right behind you. The door is open. And you don't get in. You ride the whole thing alone. You cross the line 40 minutes after it stopped counting. Why didn't you get in the car?
Yeah, shiz. I mean, I was already emotional, you know. I was already laying on the side of the road.
You had an accident beforehand.
Yes. I crashed on the downhill, and yeah, got back on the bike, and I kept going. There was a group. I was with a group, but obviously I lost them after the crash. But yeah, for me it was. I had to honor the event. I had to honor the dream. I've always wanted to ride the Tour de France. So being there was already, a dream come true. And I don't think it would have been a nice way to actually exit the tour that way, getting in the car. I was happy riding to the finish line, and even if the finish line was not there, they've packed up everything. I was happy, I still rode my bike. And I could then call it a day, instead of getting into the car. It's just not, as an athlete, we a lot of the time we're hard on ourselves. We've got a way on how we want things to go, and even if they don't go the way that we want them to be, you still have your own way that you would be happy, to exit a situation and live with that for the rest of your life. And for me, that was just one of those days. I was happy to sort of talk about that day, not having to go into the car, but, ride to the finish and at least honor the Tour de France, because it is a big event, and I've always wanted to be there.
A life dream. I want to go back to the beginning a little bit, and I want you to take me back to Capricorn Park. The streets, the house, the people. The big question for me is, why cycling?
Growing up in Capricorn, you start to realize that you only leave the township probably once a year, when your mother goes to buy your Christmas clothes, you then, you have to go to town. That's when you take a taxi, go to town. That's the only time you leave the township. But otherwise, the township becomes a box where, you never really go out to see places. And for me, when I started cycling, it wasn't even a thing to even be a competitor or actually take it too serious. It was basically something that was able to get me outside of Capricorn, then I could go see Tukai. A friend of mine that that used to cycle back then, he was a bit older than me. So every time when he came back from his rides, he would tell us what he saw. I went to someone's town, we saw baboons, we saw this. And I'd be like, I would love to see baboons. I would like to see all these places you're talking about. And that's basically what got me into cycling. I was like,
to see the world, to explore.
Yes, get out of this place and go see these places. And funny enough, on school holidays, we would do a team ride to someone's town and back. And then, I'd basically relax with my friends during the day. We'd sit on a danger box. There's not much to do in a township. You basically sit in a danger box. It's dangerous, but, you don't care about those things. And in the afternoon, I'd start to feel bored, and I'd think, what else can I do? And then I'd go do a second ride, and again, I would explore, just ride up Tukai, see what's happening there, see a lot of things, and then come back and I'd feel good about myself. You know, I've seen a lot of places, because in the township, all you see is basically negative things. You see people stabbing each other, shooting each other, drinking, and all those things. So I needed something really positive, you know, to sort of stay on top of what I wanted to do.
So there was the physical escape, so removing yourself from the environment, but it sounds like there was also an emotional escape. It was a way of calming your mind and creating peace and serenity in your own inner world.
Particularly Capricorn, where I grew up, there was no role models or someone you could actually look up to. So it was quite easy to sort of like, you know, continue doing the wrong things, because when you do those things, you'd actually be received in a positive way, because that's what they know. That's all they know, you know, negative things. So you'd find a guy that happens to sell drugs. He's more popular than anyone else in the township, because that's, people see that as, you know, the coolest thing. So for me, it was, you know, a way of escaping that and just being in a place where my mind could be at ease, you know. And you start to understand, just riding past a lot of shops, riding up to Kai Forest, Summons Town, around the Cape Point, Chapman's Peak, you know, it had a way of sort of like really calming me. You know, I'd come back late and sort of like park my bike in the bathroom at home, and then I already can't wait to actually do it again the next day, because it was just a way of getting me out of, you know, everything that I was so used to in the township, which was, you know, not the nicest of things.
So it's, you know, while you're saying that, I'm thinking about, you know, human beings have a series of defaults. So we programmed in a certain way. One of the defaults is that if we did something a certain way, we'd always repeat it because it was safe. It's called an inertial default. We then have something called an ego default. In ancestral past, what was very important is status, because status got you more opportunity. So in this modern reality, we defend ego quite substantially. We also then have an emotional default. In ancestral past, it was good to be reactive, and the more stressed you got, the more you upregulated your system. It wasn't a bad thing, but today it's a little bit different. But the thing that really kind of bound us together was something known as a social default.
Right.
We did what everyone else did because we needed to be part of a group. Because if we're not, we didn't survive.
Yes.
Yet you were able to transcend this most powerful social default. What gave you the strength? Was it looking for the escape, or was it something inside that said, I want more?
I guess I've always been a person that always wants more. You know, I always want more, and I'm okay with certain things, you know, because before I started cycling, you know, I had, you know, a couple of my friends, and we did a lot of things that, you know, I'm really not proud of today. And I knew at some point that this is not what I wanted to do. And I started spending a lot of time at home, you know, where I'd come back from school, watch TV. And the only time I'd go out is if my mom maybe sent me to the shop. And, you know, when I go to the shop, if I would meet my friends where we normally, you know, sit or sort of spend time, and, you know, they would call me a homeboy, you know, because I wasn't spending time with them anymore. And I was okay with that. You know, I was okay being called a homeboy, because I knew I wouldn't get in trouble then, because before I'd always get in trouble almost every day. You know, I was always in trouble. So when I made that shift, you know, being labeled that way wasn't a problem for me, because at the end of the day, I was not in trouble. And secondly, I was doing things that made me happy. You know, going out and riding my bike, I would be happy. Going out to run, I would feel happy. So I also like to do different things. You know, when someone is sort of like going this way, I like to go this side to test what's happening here. I'm a firm believer, you know, that if you put enough work into something will eventually happen. You know, and I think a lot of the time, a lot of people start to tap out before that even happens. And for me, it was that. And I've done it on empty stomach sometimes, you know, which, again, even by the time I did it on empty stomach, I still knew something must come out of it, you know. So that sort of like really drove me to sort of like keep going and keep pushing.
Did you identify that you had to be active every day to feel the sense of self?
No, I don't think so. I think it was more a thing of, you know, when you want more and you just want to go out there and keep testing yourself. So for me, I've always been a very competitive person. I've got a 5-year-old son. He's very competitive as well. So yeah, I love to sort of be better in whatever I do. So for me, it was a thing of going out and sort of like riding up a climb at the speed, or running to Muizenberg at the speed.
I'm trying to beat the yesterday's
Yeah.
time. Or...
Now, when I go to bed, I'm thinking about how else can I do? What else can I do to actually be faster? And the next day, I couldn't wait to actually get up and sort of like go do it again, but do it better. So yeah, doing those kind of things really brought the best out of me, because I kept challenging myself. And
striving.
Yes, and you start to find that a lot of the time you're not in competition with anyone else but yourself. And I did enjoy that. I did really enjoy that, competing with myself and sort of like whatever it was that I did.
So there's an interesting getting to know you a little bit better through online platforms. There's this interesting like extract. It talks about you're on this resprayed second-hand bike, and you having a chat to your friend Ryan.
Yes.
And you tell him that you're going to ride the Tour de France.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been a dreamer.
How do you respond?
Yeah. Well, at that point, I knew that it sounded delusional, but I did want to do it. And whenever I heard that, I knew that God works in mysterious ways. Some people have gotten there a lot easier. Some people have gotten there in the most difficult way, but somehow it does happen, and it doesn't happen to all of us, but it does happen if you believe hard enough, and believe hard enough. It does eventually happen, and I believed it. And the people that were mentoring me, I think from seeing how passionate I was, it made sense for them to also think that you should be able to get there with what you're doing now, or the work you're putting in now, because you start to do a lot of crazy things, to a point where you start to think that it's highly impossible not to make it. If you're 15, 16 year old and you're doing 200-kilometer rides with professionals, which at the time you think, I should be doing this, but when you want it, when you want it, you start to do the craziest things.
Or you do the right things.
The right things, yes.
But you have a look, you go back and you're 14, 15 years old, and you knew something about yourself. There's something you knew about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is that thing that you knew about yourself that everyone else was saying it's impossible, it's ridiculous, it's you're not seeing things clearly? What did you know about yourself at that stage of life, that early stage of life?
I think at that stage in life, I knew how strong I was mentally, and it's been something that I think I picked up quite early, and with being like that, you start to understand how influential you are, because even with my friends, some of them have started running and we're not good, but they started being around me. We started training together, and they start to become better, and they would start winning their own races. I mean, one friend of mine was slightly older than me. He started winning his races, so we're training together. And another friend of mine was younger than me, so we started being, this trio that trained together, doing positive things. So we were actually all going out of the township and leaving all the bad things behind. And everyone started doing better. And I think a lot of it was, just me realizing, how my mentality sort of like would kick in and sort of like creating a positive environment for anyone that was around me. And also being a bit delusional in sort of like thinking that, you got to train more to get to where you want to be, which we all did. And we did see what outcome that actually, gave all of us. We were then all able to win our running races. So a lot of the time I would speak about it, but I would also back it with work. We'd speak about it, and then
it's the belief in the hard work, and the belief in the hard work, and the belief in the hard work.
Yeah, so basically, it all works together at some point. You can't do one and sort of like not do the other one, because then that delusionalness, it actually doesn't work. You have to sort of like make sure that, if you believe, you still put in the work.
But it's amazing, there's the best definition I've ever heard of belief, and it's a definition that defines belief.
Yeah.
This all-important thing as the intersection between fact and faith.
Yeah.
So you know a little bit about yourself, and you believe in a better future, and that's the intersection.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's a really powerful thing. But I want to know a little bit about your mom. There's stories about washing lines, there's stories about jerseys, dogs guarding your bike. Tell me more about that.
I've been one of the luckiest people, my mom was a single parent, she's been a single parent, making sure that we achieved whatever it is that we wanted to do, and she was always there supporting us. There were days when we actually had to go around cross country or any running races, she'd walk us to Pick and Pay, which is about a 10-minute walk. And knowing how dangerous Capricorn Park was, she would walk with us at 5 a.m. in the morning. And, after dropping us, she would have to walk back by herself, So we were sitting in the bus going to a race, and at the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh man, hopefully she gets home safe. But she wanted us to, she wanted us to obviously do better, which I think also really contributed to, how I processed some of the things in life. And I remember when I started cycling, a friend of mine, we started on the same day. We were actually told that the club would give us bikes the next day. So I got home, I told my mom that I'm going to start cycling. I'm going to get a bike tomorrow. And she was like, well, if that's what you want to do, then then go for it. And
Which club was this?
It was called Ben Bicycles.
And did they have an outreach program, or did they have a development program, or what?
Yes.
How did you connect with them?
It was a development program that they actually had. It was run by a guy called Jeff Mamile. He was basically servicing and selling bikes, and would basically help a few guys that wanted to sort of cycle. And so my friend was riding for him, and that's how I got to learn about it. And I had to sort of like go to the container, help him sort of like fix some of the bikes. And then obviously you'd have to pay 100 Rand as an entry fee, which I didn't have at the time, but what I did was, every day after school I'd go there and help him sort of like pack the bikes and stuff. And one of the afternoons, when I got there, he sort of has put a bike together for me, and I could then, take it home, and I was very excited. And when I told my mom about it, she was very excited. She knew obviously, the dangers that comes with, a young kid being on a bicycle on the roads in South Africa.
Now this bike that you took home, I'm going to take a little diversion. This bike that you brought home, was this the best bike you've ever seen?
Yes, that one. Yeah, it was sprayed yellow, And at the time I thought it was
it was a bomb.
Yeah, it was a bomb, and until I sort of like started going out of the township, and on a Saturday, you start to see other people coming with. At that time I didn't know the difference between a steel bike, aluminium, carbon. It didn't matter, and someone came with a Scott aluminium bike, and I was like, oh, that's a cool bike. And I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to see a lot of different bikes, and I was like, okay. I thought my bike was nice. And then when I looked at Jeff, was basically running the Ben cycling club, I looked at his bike, I was like, oh, his bike is cool and it's nicer than mine. And then when you go out, you start to see a lot of other bikes, and I'm like, wow, these things are cool. And so to quickly go back, a friend of mine that we started together, so his parents told him that he needs to take his bike back. He's not going to cycle. It's too dangerous. It's not worth it. So he had to take his bike back to the club. And I continued. I was like...
Your mom believed in you. She saw your vision, your dream.
Yes. And I was like, I was very happy, because I was thinking, and to this day, I still think, for a parent, a single parent to sort of like go do it. Anything can happen. You can actually get hit by a car and die, but at least it is something you wanted to do. And just being always there and supporting my sister and I, because I've got a twin sister that was very good in sport as well. And yeah, her contribution in sort of like making sure that we had everything that we needed to go to our running races, or even on days where she had to make a plan to get us to a race. She made a plan. Obviously she was working and not earning much, but she would still go borrow money somewhere else to make sure that we go to the race and race. And I think for her, it was, what really helped her was that, she put in that amount of effort and support, and we were winning. I would win my race, my sister would win her race. So I think in a way...
You didn't want to let her down. It's like, I'm going to win the race. You've gone to all this effort, and you've sacrificed so much for us.
So we have to make it work. And also just seeing how much she believed in us. She really believed in us and was always making sure that we ate properly. It's quite difficult if you're in a household where like there's not much, but I know what sports demand. So on my cycling days, my mom would make pasta and a nice healthy dish that allowed me to sort of like be able to perform the next day, get us some energy, everything we needed. So it was easier for us to sort of like go, you're putting in so much work. It's easier for us to make sure we do the same. Slightly different, but we have to put in the work to make sure that we make you proud as well. But for her, it was never about the results.
But it's such a parenting lesson, believing in your kids and sacrificing for your kids, and just this rapport that unfolded between all the family members, your sister, yourself, and your mom. Really, really impactful.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's and to this day, I've got my own kids now, and I still apply the same method that my mom sort of like ran with when we were young. Always being supportive. Obviously now it's being done a lot differently because now there are better resources. There's a lot of knowledge to actually support the kids in whatever it is they want to do. So, but yeah, you start to understand just that. It sort of also helps people, even when they are actually adults. It makes a big difference. You start to know what to do, how to do it, but also to appreciate the support around you, because that ecosystem means a lot, and it's the one that actually get you places. If you don't appreciate the ecosystem that actually supports you and make sure that you get there the best way possible, then yeah, it becomes quite difficult to become the person you want to be. I was one of the luckiest athletes to actually have the support system that I had and the mentorship that I had.
Journey.
Throughout the journey. And the nice thing about it was no one wanted anything out of it. No one wanted anything.
They just wanted you to succeed.
Yes.
And that takes me to this, King of the Mountains at the Tour Down Under, the first Black South African to win a major classification in a World Tour race. When did you feel that the story was becoming bigger than cycling?
If I have to be honest, I think it was when I actually stopped racing professional. That's when I started understanding that everything that I've achieved was actually a lot bigger than cycling, because as athletes you're always on to the next thing. I remember winning the King of the Mountain at the Tour Down Under, and then after the tour we traveled down to Geelong to do the Great Oceans Race. And other people are still going on about the King of the Mountain, but I was already moving on to the next race, so I've forgotten about that. So, and then after that you come back to South Africa, you're already focusing on to national champs, so you're always on the go. You never really sit down and process everything that you've achieved. And a lot of that, I feel I've only started processing after I actually stopped, and now I can look back and think this was actually quite a big thing. I think even the Tour de France, I only really started processing it once I've stopped racing professionally. And I was like, but this was big. I didn't think it was that big then. I didn't understand the magnitude of, of this achievement. But if I think about it now, no, it was huge. Now I can sit back, I can look at my, my race number, I can look at, the King of the Mountain jerseys that I've got on the wall at home. Like, but these were quite big achievements. Did
you ever feel the weight of being a symbol?
From time, yeah, from time, because with the pressure, you start to feel it really quick. You start to feel it, and you'll find that a lot of people start to think that you're a machine, and then the pressure start to build up, and sometimes you'd find yourself second guessing yourself because you're thinking, this is what people think I can achieve. I'm not saying I can't achieve it, but there's only so much I can do.
Weight of expectation, and it's relentless.
It's hard, and even before the Tour de France, by the time I got to the Tour, I was already tired, and a lot of the time, by the time you get there, you need to be fresh because it's a big race. But, because how big it was for South Africa, for myself, and what that whole journey represented, by the time I got to the Tour, I was exhausted. I was yawning. I'm thinking, I'm yawning. I'm starting the biggest race of my life, but I'm out here tired. But then you start to understand that, again, this whole thing is bigger than, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than cycling.
Did you find something like some energy or some reserve or resource within once you arrived at the Tour de France?
Yes, 100%, 100%. You get there, you start to understand that you've got all the support, globally, and you get there like, I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I quickly learned that this is why they called it the Tour de France, because I remember the first stage there was the King of the Mountain. And there was only one. It was actually not a big climb, because Britannia there's no big climbs. It's all short stuff. But anyway, on the day there was one King of the Mountain, and all the teams were looking for it. And I was like, it is a great chance to actually go out and maybe try and get something. But the speeds were so high. They were super high. At some point, my chest was burning, and I was like, yeah, my chest. I haven't fought this way in a long time. I've raced, bigger races, but the Tour de France is the biggest. But you quickly start to understand why it is the biggest race in the world. The speeds are just on another level.
I want to take you back to a difficult time, December 2019.
Yeah.
Off-season ride. By the end of it, your arm is broken and you're sitting in the back of a van. Going back to that moment, we don't want to relive the circumstances. I'd rather understand the human side. It's watching that clip, you hear your arm break.
Yeah. Jeez.
What happened inside your head?
Yeah, sure. I remember when I heard that, obviously I automatically could feel the spasm. I could feel the spasm, and my mind quickly processed that, and I thought to myself, please tell me I'm dreaming, because this can't be happening. Not at that time, because I think it was on the 27th. So it was only 1 week until I fly to Australia. So so the previous year I won the King of the Mountain. So it was, going back to Australia. We haven't looked at, what we wanted out of Australia that year, but it was, it was exciting to go to Australia nonetheless. So yeah, when I felt, that snap, my mind just went, nuts. I was like, this can't be happening. And I was very angry at the time. I was very angry, furious, because as an athlete, you're always thinking like, this can't be happening, because now I won't be able to do what I want to do, or actually execute, what I wanted to execute, because I've worked hard throughout the whole December period. I've built a good foundation. The condition is quite good. So when that is all taken away by something like that, you start to feel very angry.
You have dreams, you have aspirations, you have goals for the season. There's this excitement. You put in the work, you put in the effort, and in one moment,
and it changed everything. And I even remember sitting in the van. I wasn't worried about this now. I was worried about
what happens next.
The
next morning in the hospital, like when your mind's racing, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, it was a big year. So 2019 was a big year. It was contract extension year. So a year like that is quite important. You prepare differently, because everything you do that year determines
your future.
And there were already Tour de France conversations So I knew if I sort of like have a good season, I could land up doing the Tour de France that year. And yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I was very angry, because I knew that that's, it's going to jeopardize my opportunity of going there and the Olympics preparation. So laying in the van, that's what I was thinking, and a hospital bed, that's what I was thinking. I guess also it was, angry internally, but also trying to process and realizing that there's not much I can do now. I can't undo what just happened. I just need to think of what's next.
And it's a very powerful resiliency idea, is that everything has happened in the past is the past. There's nothing we can do to change it. But we do have the power to influence the future.
Yeah.
And you automatically went into that mindset, is like, what happens next, and how do I get through this, and how do I navigate this very complex scenario that's unfolded?
Yeah, and it's not easy to get into that mindset.
Cool.
It's sort of like, yeah, think.
Did you feel a lot of pain? Or was it?
It was painful. Every time I moved, it would sort of like spasm. It would spasm, and I remember going to hospital, and they say, hey, it seems a lot complicated, because looking at they had to look at it on X-rays, and it was now a thing of your arm might need to get amputated. And I was like, it can't be happening, I was like, yeah, but again,
you brush it off. That's a really big statement.
Yeah.
You've worked your entire life to like transcend your environment.
Yeah.
You're now being recognized for what you're capable of, and it's just the beginning of your journey. And you have this commentary of like, you may not have an arm.
Yeah. I thought about it, and I was like, I'm sure but also I always have this one side of me that always believes, and when I was told that, my mind was sort of thinking, but there is a chance, but there is a chance that cannot be the case. And I was leaning towards that, until they've done a lot of tests and, have gone in to check, that's the only time we'll know. But yeah, I wasn't really thinking about it, that deep at the time, that, I could be, in a week's time, I could actually be walking around with one arm. But
there was always this hope, and there's always this optimism. And optimism, I'll just clarify, it's not toxic positivity saying nothing's wrong. It's saying that everything is wrong, and it's a very difficult situation, but I believe the future is going to be great. I believe I'm going to recover. I believe I'm going to get through this. I believe I'm going to be back on the tour.
Yeah.
I believe I'm going to be where I was, and I'm going to align my actions, my mindset, and my behaviors to that new reality, or that reality that I subscribe to.
Yeah, totally, because when you start to think negatively, it starts to impact everything that you're doing. Now you find yourself laying in hospital,
But that's our default. That
Yes.
human default is think negatively. How do you transcend negativity?
I keep going back to sort of saying I love being delusional and always seeing positivity into
But
everything.
it got you to do the extraordinary. That the delusional is it's the vehicle that has changed your life.
Yeah, totally. I always try and sort of like think in a positive way, because if you
just don't allow yourself to see the dark side.
Yes, and sometimes it's not really a good thing, because you start to brush off important things in life. Like sometimes expressing your emotions. A lot of the time. Just because I always see things, in a positive light, and sometimes it's not really a good thing, because I would sometimes suppress my own emotions, and not actually.
It's like almost inauthentic, incompatible with the experience. Is that was hard. You have to process it. You have to go through it. You have to grieve it. You have to be angry. You got to express it. But you're not allowing yourself to do any of that, because, as you said earlier, I'm focusing on the next thing.
The next thing, yes. So a lot of the time, I basically focus so much on what's next. And then, sometimes it's 3 months down the line or 6 months down, it catches you, sometimes.
So what's, in terms of this experience, what's been harder to reconcile? Was it the emotional? Was it the mental? Was it the physical? Like, it stays with you, that these events don't go away.
They don't. I think emotionally and emotionally and
Mentally.
physically and mentally as well. Because I remember when the next, maybe not the next day, because I think I was in hospital for 2 days. But when I got home, I was, I already prepped my trainer, put my bike on the trainer. Tried to sort of like create a space that I could actually work on. I had a pillow on my bike to actually just rest my arm while I was pedaling. And in that, suppressed everything else, but it was quite difficult, when it was 28, 30 degrees outside. It's January, it's summer. And the fact that I couldn't be outside and do what I love doing, and to be sitting on a stationary bike at home, that did a lot. That actually did a lot of harm than the good that it's supposed to do in terms of physical fitness.
Trying to reconcile where you should be and where you are.
Yeah. So a lot of the time you'd find yourself, being short with everyone around you, because you're just trying to make it work, and sometimes it's not working. It's just amazing how athletes sometimes process things, and why it's sometimes really good to have the right support structure around you, because they are able to sort of bring you back when things get quite difficult. They're actually able to ground you, because as an athlete you just want to keep going, and a lot of the time you take the risk to get back to where you were, and sometimes that risk is actually just not worth taking.
It's interesting how this has unfolded as a conversation, because in response to a very significant physical trauma, and what happened to your arm is a very significant event. What happens is there's a genetic change, and the genetic change is where our stress responses become upregulated. So anything that happens in the future that is stressful as an event becomes more magnified in the body. And also what happens is your fear responses start to elevate.
Right.
So we're not quite the same person that we used to be, and it doesn't unfold a week later or a month later or 6 months later. It unfolds around 4 years later.
Yeah.
And it's quite an interesting phenomenon.
I think it is. I think you start to process things a lot differently, and and start to absorb everything that may have happened then, because now you've had all this time to sort of sit back and think about it in different ways, and also think about the scenario in different ways. Would I want to change anything now? I wouldn't, because that
made you who you are.
Yeah, it's what I wanted to do. I flew in March. My arm was not even 100%. I remember going back to the hospital for checkups, and we're like, we still think you need to be on the stationary bike for another 2 weeks. And I was like, I came here, wanting to hear what I want to hear, not what what you're telling me. And then I would have to delay my trip to Europe. And at some point, because again it was a contract year, because as an athlete,
wasn't an option.
Yeah, there was no option for me to sort of not do it the way I wanted to do it, because yes, you can't waste the year, because you might also end up with no contract.
And the opportunity window is
it's
tiny.
Is so small. Yeah, it's tiny. So yeah, in March I flew down to Holland, and there was the opening weekend, and I was like, I'm ready to race.
How did you do?
I'm here. No. Luckily, COVID started, and a lot of the races started being cancelled. So that worked in my favor.
Gave you time to heal.
Sometimes you sort of I'm at the start line. That's what matters. How I do in the race doesn't really matter. But I'm here. I'm showing up. And sometimes that's all you just need to do as an athlete. You just need to show how hungry you are. And despite being injured, you're still showing a lot of gratitude, trying to put in as much work as possible to make sure that when you do make your comeback, you're not far behind.
I want to circle back to the Tour de France again, the mountain. And so the race is already over. The result decided. In that final hour, who were you riding for? What or whose face was in front of you? That last hour.
It was was basically all the kids that have ever dreamt in South Africa. When I was riding that last hour, or I mean, in my mind I was thinking about my younger self, and all the other kids that are wearing.
I've got goosebumps now.
Yeah, all the kids that are wearing baggy cycling clothes and sort of like getting their first bikes. Kids that are they're dreaming about this moment, and that's also what really drove me to sort of like finish the tour the way I did. As much as it was quite a difficult time, you start to realize that sometimes you need to go back to the drawing board and think about what it is you wanted. And when I did that, I started realizing that I did say I wanted to ride the Tour de France once, and I rode the Tour de France. I never said I wanted to win the Tour de France. I said I wanted to ride it. So the way I sort of like exited, yes, I was not happy at the time. I was thinking about a lot of things, and then sometimes when you go back and really think about the achievement on its own, it is an achievement, and we always want more. I was just thinking, would it have been nice to win a stage? Would it have been nice to do this? Would it have been nice to do this? But then you have to take it step by step. I think it took a long time for South Africa to even have a South African rider to get to the Tour de France. And we had that many years ago, and then it took a long time to get the first South African to wear yellow jersey, which Daryl Impey did. Eventually did that. It took a long time for a South African rider to win a stage at the Tour de France, which Daryl and again Louis did. So you start to understand that these events take time. I can't do it all, but in the future there could be another black South African that could then do the Tour de France and take it all the way to the end in Paris. And then later on, there could be another one that could actually then go and win the stage.
The lesson is that winning and refusing to quit are very different things. So the one earns a result.
Yes.
But the other changes the person. You are forever changed.
Yeah. No, I mean, it changes you forever. You start to know. You've trained on difficult days. You've been out on days where it was storming. You've been caught in storms. So this is nothing, And yeah, thinking about that day, I mean, it was quite it was a brutal day. Like, my hands couldn't do this. High up in the Alps, it's raining, it's super cold. Even I mean, one of the reasons why I was also suffering, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sort of like do this, take out a bar or a gel. So a lot of the time I'd have to go to the team car, drop back, go to the team car and basically just lean on the team car. And then the DS Alex would basically sort of like open up a gel and just squeeze it into my mouth. That's how brutal the day was. And then I'd basically go to the bunch again. And then when I was hungry, I'd come back, and then they would open the bar, and I'd basically lean back on the car. And I was like, I've never had a difficult day like the one I was having that day. It was brutal. But then you start to understand that a lot of people just not. It's quite difficult, like to thrive in those conditions. You must have done a lot of training camps to sort of like train in those conditions, which is why some bigger teams actually go on altitude camps, because you get to understand what that feels like in training, and your body starts to adapt to those kind of conditions. And yeah, I've never ridden on my bike in such conditions, and we actually had that back to back. So the Saturday was a similar day, and I think at least 60% of the peloton was far behind. I remember we were with Chris Froome, Garen Thomas, a lot of guys, and there was a big break up the road. And yeah, we didn't have a lot of time to sort of like make it. I think by the time we crossed the line, I think we probably had like 5 minutes to play with. So it wasn't a lot. And then Sunday was similar, another big day, rainy. I was really suffering, it was quite difficult.
Every guest on the show answers this question, and it's a reflection question. So when you look back at the young boy from Capricorn Park, and you reflect on the man sitting here, what's the biggest shift that had to happen on the inside for you to be successful?
I think the biggest shift had to, how I handled resilience, patience, and the loneliness. I think that those have to be, the toughest things. Those shifts, sort of like knowing how to be lonely and being okay with that, and understanding what it is that I wanted. Because there were a lot of days where I was sitting in my apartment in Spain, go on Instagram, see my friends, they're actually having a big jaw in Long Street. They're having fun, they're dancing, music. And I would think to myself, I'm missing out. And then again, there'd be another mindset shift that would sort of think, I don't think I'm missing out. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. So I'm not missing out.
Was it a mindset shift or a self-dialogue?
Maybe, I think it was a self-dialogue. Thinking about it and sort of thinking, no, I'd rather be here. I'd rather be sitting here by myself, feeling bored, because when in those situations, you start to realize every day is the same. In South Africa, you start to understand Monday to Friday feels the same. Yeah, well, sometimes the same, but you can feel a weekend. The weekend is different. In Europe, every day is the same. You wake up, it's Monday. Monday is going to feel like Saturday. It's all boring. Nothing. There's nothing exciting. So a lot of the time I always wanted to be out racing rather, because at least, there's something. Otherwise, outside of that, you training whatever training you have to do on the day, come back, and then relax. That's all you do. And then at some point you start to understand, hey, this life is not lekker. But when you hear it from, I remember Dean Downing, he was a pro in the UK when he told me about it. It was like, how is it feeling being lonely? And I was like, oh, finally someone is actually talking about it. I thought maybe I was just, boring myself. Maybe I was just a boring person. But then you start to understand, no, that's how it is. That's what you have to overcome.
And it's not unique to cycling. In my experience, I spent 25 years in sports or 20 years in sport, and the thing I struggled with the most was the loneliness.
Yeah,
I struggled.
It's not a nice feeling.
And you're describing, I'd much rather be cycling, much rather be competing, and there's all these days between events, and you dread those days between events.
Yeah.
You just want them to pass, because what are you going to fill the time with?
Yeah, no, it's quite difficult to overcome those days, but for me that was the biggest shift.
It's also the price of excellence. I think CEOs and entrepreneurs and anyone who's in pursuit of the extraordinary, there are these sacrifices.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets lonely at the top, and sometimes the journey is lonely, and sometimes all the travel that comes along with it, like we experienced, is the kind of the material loneliness.
Yeah.
But I want to change the conversation direction. I want to change it to fatherhood. You've been known to say, or you've said, that fatherhood has changed your relationship with risk.
Yeah.
When did the fearless version of Nick begin to quieten? And what scares you today that hasn't scared you historically?
I think it was when my son was born, in 2021. I remember when I was racing, I could take a lot of risk. I could actually, hit the corners, the apex at high speed, and be okay with crashing, because I was like, I need to take this risk, because it's either it will pay off, or I can actually, the worst that could happen, I'd find myself laying on the ground. So one of the two. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes when it's crank time in the race, the last 10 Ks, you might see a small gap. You take it. The gap is not even there, but you sort of like, you can fight and make your way in, through the gap. But what I've learned is, when I had my first son, I just couldn't do those things anymore, because I'm thinking, I can't do this and I can crash. And that means that when I go home, I won't be able to play with my son, because if your collarbone is broken, you can't pick up your son. There's not much you can do. And those gaps as well, you always think twice before you take the gap. You always look and assess, can I actually go? And sometimes you're actually even forced to actually now open, communicate to the guys, like, can I Before, I didn't have to ask. I basically just go bang, bang, and I just go, create the gap myself. So yeah, the big shift, it was, I just couldn't do those things anymore. I had to sort of like, slow down a little bit, even in training. You find yourself, some of my friends and I would sometimes go crazy on downhills, Chapman's Peak, and into Kloof-Neck. There's a speed camera coming down Kloof-Neck that we always went super fast so that it sort of like catches us. But yeah, even on those days, I started not chasing those things anymore, because a small accident, can basically take you out. Not only, from racing, but now there's not much you can do at home. You can't have the fun that you want to have. So yeah, those things, I started being careful on how I, what I do and how I do things.
It's amazing that I also experienced my own personal capacity. But I just want to jump across to live your dream. You've launched this non-profit building pathway that didn't exist for you. You're giving opportunity, funding race entries, mentoring juniors. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, so Live Your Dream is, non-profit, and it's basically something I've wanted to build. When I stopped racing internationally, I sort of ventured into other things, away from cycling. I wanted to sort of like be good at something else, outside of cycling, and I could see the gap growing in cycling.
At what stage of your life was this?
This was maybe 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yes, 3 years ago. So, and I mean, I was forced to make that shift because I had health problems. So I had to sort of like step away from international racing, because I mean, to be there, you have to, you have to pass your medical bills. You can't have something wrong. You have to be fully healthy. And I was born with Wolff Parkinson's White. So yeah, there's an extra pathway in my heart that sort of like sometimes just make my heart shoots
Sure.
straight over the roof. And obviously at the time there was a lot of people suffering, actually in sports in general. There was a player that sort of like dropped dead on a soccer field. And
With the same condition?
Similar.
And when did you find out that you had this heart condition?
Yeah, long ago actually. Before, well, it was a bit of a scare in the beginning of my career. It was a bit of a scare because before you actually, turn into professional, you have to sort of like do all these medical checks, and they picked it up there. I think it was 2016.
Has it always like kind of been a weight on your shoulders?
No, not at all, because it never bothered me. It never really bothered me. It was almost like by default how they found it. And so the rest of the team traveled to Europe and I had to stay, and so now that was frustrating, because I was like, well, I thought my career was about, to lift off, and now it seemed like it's not going to. But I was cleared because, they were going to do an ablation. And they didn't, when they stressed the heart, it was functioning pretty well. So they didn't, they were happy to leave it as it is, because it was actually causing no harm. There was no threat. So they were happy for me to start and race and do whatever I wanted to do. But then later on, with a lot of athletes starting to sort of like suffer, some athletes just
cardiac events and
they starting they didn't want to take those kind of risks, and from time to time I would see it jumping like to 240 beats per minute, and then again it was like very short episodes, and
would that never worry you that you had these sporadic bursts?
It only started when I was I think like 4 years ago. When I was doing efforts, and a lot of the time it always happened, on the climbs where, because some of the climbs in Europe, it's so sheltered. There's not much airflow, and it would happen in those events. Where it basically just shoots up and then it comes down, and then I feel a glitch. We did more tests, and so when the team, was going to shift to Q36.5, it was now a thing of
What's Q36.5?
So that's the team I was racing for. So at the time it was Dimension Data and it was the entity. So now it was obviously getting a new sponsor.
Okay.
So I had a pretty much it was a contract agreement, but it was still under certain conditions, and we really thought to ourselves that I wanted to do it. And
4 years ago.
Yes. I really wanted to do it, and my boss at the time, Doug, in a way was against it. He was he actually just wanted me to sort of you just hang up the bike, but again, as an athlete, you always want to hear what you want to hear. So at the time, I wasn't thinking about that. So which was very selfish. I've got 2 kids, so you don't want to be taking those kind of risks when you've got 2 kids. So it was a thing of
You had to overcome the confirmation bias.
Yes. So and my mentors were also saying that it's probably safer to exit now, because we don't know if you were to keep pushing now, what that could look like, later on in the future.
So there must have been a very difficult moment.
It was super difficult, and
you've been able to transcend your historic reality, but out the township, you've made a life for yourself, made a name for yourself. You've created huge opportunity. It's the beginning of this unbelievable journey for you, and then you have this conversation where your heart's just saying, I don't know.
Yes. No, it was really difficult. It was probably one of the most difficult times in my life. Sort of like.
And you have to reinvent.
Yes, reinvent. You find yourself sitting on a intersection. Thinking, I want to do it, but at what cost? There's 2 kids.
You kept seeing your kids' faces.
Yes, and you think to yourself, something could happen. We never know. Something could happen, and then what? So I had to, eventually sort of come to terms with it, and I was like, okay, now I know. I think everyone else, they were sort of saying I should actually probably stop, was actually right, and I think those are the people that really cared about. Yeah, they really cared about me. But a lot of the time, as an athlete, you've got your own mind. You're thinking of a way that works for you. And I thought to myself, if it wasn't for the kids, I would do it. But I think there's a bigger picture, and I was happy to sort of take a step back. So I saw the gap with LYD. I saw I've been away from cycling for a couple of years. Not much has changed. Instead, it's actually it's getting worse. There's not a lot of
What's getting worse?
Well, in terms of performance and opportunities, and seeing a lot of kids from townships, getting the opportunities to actually, race and perform and get the right support. We just couldn't see it.
This is why you launched the foundation.
Yes. And I thought, maybe I need to come back into cycling, put a team together that can actually sort of produce riders that can race and go to, race for teams overseas, and perhaps be ready for the Tour de France, because I believed that I know the demands of international racing, and I knew how I got there, and I believe that I could actually help the kids that actually have the talent now, with a structured way to get there, a structured pathway to get there, because you still find a lot of kids are not curious enough about the sport, and which again, is why the gap is there. Because I remember I was very curious. Whenever I trained with professionals, I would ride with them, ask a lot of questions, and about nutrition, about training, and at the time I started realizing that a lot of the pros were actually not getting tired of riding with me, because I was asking interesting questions, and they could see this kid is hungry, So if you're thinking about it, being 15 years old and having a professional cyclist messaging you, are you riding tomorrow? You come join me. And
it was an honor.
It was an
that's
honor.
Inspiring.
Yes.
But I just want to. There's a very interesting thread I'm trying to weave here,
Yeah.
and that is you look at your life's journey, and it's been an incredible road. You look at what you've done for the sport, and that's been a remarkable achievement. You look at your position now, and you see the sport now, and it's almost like you know your role. It's like this clarity is that you can make a fundamental difference, not just to the lives of those in disadvantaged communities, but to the sport and bridge the two.
Yes, and absolutely. And I think, it comes from, just having the support that I had and worked with, various people, the curiosity. Even though, I've been away from the sport, I'm still very curious about where the sport is going and the shift in sport. And you start to see the threads that, there needs to be a shift in how the youngsters are being prepared, because the sport is not staying the same. And I think a lot of people, they get fixated at what worked 20 years ago.
It's almost reimagining your role in the sport. It's not exiting the sport.
Yes.
It's just kind of a new dimension to the sport itself.
Yes, 100%. And it makes me super excited because, yes, I mean, it's quite difficult to get sponsors. It's and I also don't blame the sponsors. I because I've sort of like ventured into business and sort of like come back to cycling, I start to understand that I don't blame the sponsors for not really wanting to sponsor teams, because the ROI is just not there. And the sport has been going backwards. So now, with me coming back, it's almost a thing of...
Can you make a difference?
Yes, I can make the difference. So you just need to trust the process, and I'll take and actually, I'll take the opportunities that are there, rejuvenate where cycling is, and perhaps we can then see, the positive side to road cycling in South Africa.
Reimagined road cycling.
Yes, and with that, sometimes you have to build proof points, which is why, so under the LYD cycling project, we currently only have one junior. And we did so intentionally because a lot of the time, if you work with a big group in the beginning or early stages, you've got limited resources, So it becomes quite difficult to sort of like help 10 kids at the same time. So I wanted to build proof points with one kid. So I've got a kid called Mihlali. He's 16, turning 17. I started working with him, coaching him, mentoring him in January. And you can already see where he is now. So he won the King of the Mountain, a hill climb, two or 3 weeks ago in the junior category. He came third last weekend, Sunday. So there was a Kilani race. It's a flat race. I mean, he's a climber. It's a flat race. He finished third in the juniors. So you can see his consistency. So now,
how does it make you feel?
It makes me feel really proud because I see myself a lot in him. He's always willing to learn. He asks a lot of questions. And it just makes me very excited to want to work with him and sort of like get him where he needs to be, where he wants to be. And I had a lot of opportunities, but I believe, he can now have better opportunities than, the opportunities that I have. Just mainly because of now the context that I have in Europe, and knowing to sort of like prepare him properly, so that when I actually go overseas and get him an opportunity, he is ready to go and perform instead of keeping up and catching up at the same time, because that's hard. That's what we had to do. We were used to racing 100 kilometers, 109 kilometers in South Africa. You get to Europe, you now have to race for 170 Ks. And you quickly start to realize that the racing only starts in the last 50 Ks. By that time, we're all dead. So it's different. So with him, this year, I haven't been racing him a lot. And I think it has been a bit frustrating for him, but I make him understand that, there's a bigger picture.
And a preparation
process.
Everything that you had to learn on the fly, you have like this incredible opportunity to provide the frameworks, the structures, and the road to success.
To success, yes. Now he understands.
So amazing gift.
Yeah, now he understands. His body is able to actually, handle the load. And you can actually already see in how consistent he is. I mean, if always finishes in the top 5 now. And, and what I was telling him is, You know, the fact that you're already winning on climbing races, on a flat race, you're also there, you podium. You don't find that a lot these days. You find, you know, it's either someone is good on a climb, and when they go overseas, where you now need to, even if you're a sprinter, you still have to go up the climbs. Even if you're a climber, you still need to be there on the GC. So you need to be consistent. You know, yes, there is something that you specialize in, but you still need to be consistent. You can't be good at one thing and very bad on one, because that's why, you know, guys like Tadej and Jonas are able to win the Tour de France. You have to be consistent, and
this multifaceted kind of development process, and that's the gift of your journey, and that's a gift of your experience.
Yes.
I want to shift the tempo a little bit, and I'm going to ask a couple of questions which ideally would have a one word or two word or short sentence response.
Okay.
So the first one is going to be mountains or sprints.
Definitely mountains.
Toughest climb you've ever ridden.
It has to be Motorola. It has to be Motorola, yeah.
One thing TV never shows about the tour.
How hard it is to get in a breakaway.
If your sons wanted to go pro, first thing you would tell them.
Sure. Put in the work. Just put in the work.
It's the work.
There's no other way.
If you were able to put up a billboard seen by every kid in every township, what does it say?
Live your dream. Live your dream. That's how it all begins. You need to see yourself there before you even get there. You need to be able to paint the picture of you know, where you want to be. Because if you don't have the picture of where you want to go, it's difficult to get there.
And you're the embodiment of that.
Yes, yes.
Finish the sentence. The bike gave me.
The bike gave me freedom, gave me clarity, gave me resilience, mobility.
You've climbed the biggest mountains in cycling, but now you've built a room, the Ascent Summit, for leaders and change makers to speak honestly about purpose, performance, and failure. What mountain are you climbing now?
A very exciting one. You know, it's one that, yeah, it's a lot of the time in, you know, formal clothing. Even though I enjoy being in Lycra a lot of the time, but yeah, this one is very exciting because I, you know, in my, you know, professional phase, I met a lot of people in different professions, and you start to understand everyone is curious. You know, I would meet someone in the legal, or someone that's maybe doing accounting, and I ask a lot about what they do. But also, you find that they want to ask me about what I'm doing, and they're more fascinated about what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm fascinated about what you're doing. Like, what does your day-to-day look like? And you also find, you know, in South Africa, there's not a lot of spaces where, you know, people that want to achieve big things. There's no room for that. You know, it's difficult to get all those people in the same space at the same time. And you find people meet at bars, at clubs. And I wanted that to change because you start to realize a lot of people in South Africa, they want to do their own thing, you know, which is quite difficult. Everything is challenging these days. It's a lot easier and better to do things in partnerships. You know, rather partner up with someone. And because I've always wanted to be in business and do a lot of stuff within that space. And I've always found some of them I've done them by myself. And a lot of them I've always wanted to sort of like find another young person that is eager to create something, and we can actually partner and do something. And it was just quite difficult to find that. And that's why I sort of came up with the concept of actually creating the summit, to bring everyone that's sort of like that is building something, bring all of them, you know, in the same space, and we can have those conversations of, you know, how do we get there?
And what have you learned in that room that you didn't know before?
What I've learned is that you just have to believe in what you're doing and put in the work. But also when you put in the work, you gotta be open to relationships. Go to places because a lot of the time, well, a lot of what people wouldn't know about me is that I'm an introvert. It's quite difficult to believe, but yeah, I'm an introvert. It's quite difficult for me to be in spaces where there's a lot of people, but because of my curiosity, that's how I basically do well in those spaces, because I always want to know, well, what are people doing and what can I learn from them? So creating those relationships with, CEOs, people in high places, because I've always just been a curious person. So I always ask how people got there. Well, what did you have to do? And so, yeah, a lot of the time is not wanting to speak about what I'm doing. I'm like, yes, I know you asked me about what it feels like to ride the Tour de France, but I want to talk about what you're doing. How did you get there? So yeah, I get a lot of the time I get excited about talking about other things, because yeah, I just like
learning and growing and evolving.
Yes.
But the one word that you've mentioned, I mean, I'd love to do a word count on this, is curious. And I don't know if you know Stephen Kotler. He's one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
And he's all about achieving the impossible and about flow and the potential that exists within and being able to express it. I'm a really big fan of his. And he highlights the importance of curiosity in our capacity to do great things in life. Great things by our standards. It doesn't matter what other people think, it's what we think. That's the only thing that's important.
Yeah.
And he says that curiosity is the launching point. It's the starting point for something much more important.
Yeah.
Because we can't be passionate unless we're curious.
Yes.
And passion is the fuel.
The fuel,
it's the X factor. On those dark days, those hard days, the passion is what's going to elevate you. And you listen to Steve Jobs, there was passion. You listen to Bezos, there was passion. Anyone who's achieved any greatness, there's been passion.
Passion, yeah.
But then there's another thread, is that without the curiosity, you can't be passionate. Without the passion, you can't have purpose.
Yes.
So like many other guests on the show, you've entered this phase of purpose. And purpose is about contribution. It's about what can you do for. While you're talking about your protege,
yes,
the person who's in the program, the smile on your face, the excitement that came through was so powerful. This contribution to others, contribution to society, contribution to sport is now part of the equation in your life, where historically it was just the passion for cycling and the passion for that journey or that stage of your life. I mean, it's a great terminology there, but it's just such a great thing that you've reiterated this curiosity theme.
Yeah, no, thank you. I love seeing people doing great things, and but also just mainly because of my mentors, sort of like just seeing how much they wanted me to be a professional cyclist and sort of like achieve all these things. As much as I wanted it, they wanted it as much as I did, and you look at other people around, especially in Capricorn. There's a lot of people I follow. You can see, well, at the time there wasn't a lot of people that went to university, when I started my cycling journey. But now, a lot of things have changed. There's a lot of people that went to university, graduated, and then you can see some people are actually building something, but they don't only need the support, but they need to be in the right spaces. They need to be around, positive people. And for the summit event, I actually invited a handful people from Capricorn, and to be in that space and sort of like see how things are done, how people, express themselves, and perhaps they can learn a few things. And I learned this, a lot in my career, where you start to understand a lot of things were exchanged a lot differently. And, there were events, if I needed to sort of like go do a speaking engagement, sometimes I would charge. It depended what the event was about, but circumstances, and sometimes it was, what's the network like there? So sometimes I would take the network and leave the money. I'm like, okay, cool, it's fine. I'll do it, because I'll be able to meet opportunities. Yes. And today I'm able to do all the things I'm able to do because of, all the opportunities and the people that I've met.
And again, it goes to the beginning of a discussion around support.
Yes, the connections,
relationships, and how you've had to be an extrovert because it is such a fundamental part of life and part of success and potential that exists within humans.
Yeah. So you have to go out there.
You have to be out there, yeah. And it goes back to another conversation. Just show up. Just show up.
That's all that's needed. And you start to understand that, sometimes in showing up, that's where the opportunity is. Because even so, I remember when in my matric year, I actually had a contract. I actually had 2 contracts with MTN feeder team, and the other one was with Europe Car. So now I had to make a decision of, because I was still at school, the teams were in Joburg. I didn't want to leave school. So it was a thing of choosing which one I wanted to go with. And the one that was going to pay me money, it required me to move and go there. And that's not what we wanted to do. And the other one allowed me to stay at home and finish school, and I wasn't going to get paid there, but I'll still get to do all the races, all the big races. So I went with that one. I was like, at least, I'm able to be at school and do all these races. Races in Joburg, tours in Mpumalanga. I did all of them. And in doing them, I was able to win, which then got me big opportunities. So sometimes you have to look at a lot of things differently, and I still talk about it. That's the story of your life. Yeah, I talk about it to a lot of youngsters that, everyone sort of like wants to make something, but you have to be careful on how you because you have to always think long term and,
So if you're thinking long term, go back to the beginning, go back to that boy in Capricorn Park. And, you're waiting for your turn on a bike or, life is simple then. But my question to that boy is, would you believe that you're the man sitting in this chair today?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I think sometimes, I think it's yes, you have to have a bit of luck on your side, to actually achieve some of the things. And, as sad as it is, I think there's still a lot of talented people out there that sometimes just don't have the luck. The talent is there, everything is there, but it's just, the luck is just not there. And sometimes that's the thing. And I believe, with me, everything was, pointing in the right direction, which really helped me.
There's been a lot of research on luck. It's a very prominent theme. And researchers have evaluated whether some people are luckier than others. And the conclusions that they've come up with or arrived at was that the difference between people who are lucky and those who appear not to be is not the circumstances. It's how they see the circumstances.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It does. Because, opportunities are, opportunity and hard work basically equals luck in a way, or somehow that's where luck comes
converges into outcomes.
Yes. So everything still needs to be done. The work still needs to be there.
The work has to be done.
Yeah. And then obviously with all of those things, then the opportunity is then created. And it sometimes might look like luck, but sometimes it's just purely your work that you've put in. So, yeah.
The podcast is referred to or known as Shift Happens. If I were to say shift happens to you, what does it mean?
Shift happens is venturing into new things, venturing into, murky waters that, you don't know what's underneath there, but you go there and hoping for the best and also just wanting to create impact.
I like that. Nick, it was an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you so much.
It's a real treat. I think there's so many lessons in your journey. I can't imagine, what the future looks like. It's going to be extraordinary. You're going to do great things. I think it's just the beginning for you. I sincerely hope that you're about to make huge inroads into cycling South Africa, and that we see a different chapter, and you're very much part of that chapter. And grateful for your time. Thank you. There are three standouts from Nick's story. The first is to be curious. For Nick, cycling began as a way to explore new worlds and gather new experiences. His escape became a passion. The passion became his profession, and the profession became his purpose. The lesson: never stop exploring, learning, and moving beyond the edge of your comfort zone. The second lesson is to show up before you're ready. Opportunities rarely arrive when conditions are perfect. I don't believe they're ever perfect. Again and again, Nick stepped into moments of uncertainty before he felt he was fully prepared. If you think about it, progress belongs to those who are just willing to begin. The third takeaway is something that has echoed with all my guests, and that is the value and importance of support in our lives. For Nick, his mom, his sister, his coaches, his fellow riders have all been an accelerant in his career. Their belief raised his standards and sharpened his effort, every gain a way of honoring the people who backed him. Nick's story inspires not one but two call to actions. Think of one thing that you've been curious about and kept its arm's length. You're not ready, unsure, don't have time, it's outside your comfort zone. And over the next month, take one concrete step towards it every week. Curiosity does not become purpose in a moment. It is something that compounds, one very uncomfortable step at a time. The second call to action is to think of someone who has believed in you and supported you when success was uncertain. Why not reach out to them today and thank them? And then look around you and ask yourself, who can I do that for? Join me for the next episode and keep shifting.
Shift Happens is a First Light and Prime Media collaboration. This episode was produced by Grant Jensen and Kaylee Cruiser and filmed by Stephen Phillipson.